guys want to.
You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where we may fail. And there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep, my faith will stand. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are mine. Your grace abounds in deepest waters. Your sovereign hand will be my guide. When feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you've never failed, and you won't start now. So I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are mine. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you will call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you will call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you will call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. My soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours, and you are mine.
To the one who is able to restore us and lift us up and give us all that we need for life, we give him glory and praise. And that's the one we sing to this morning. So I invite you to stand with us and give praise to our God.
Blessed be your name.
plentiful, where streams of abundance flow. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name. When I'm found in a desert place, though I walk through the wilderness, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name. When the sun's shining down on me, when the world's all as it should be, blessed be your name. And blessed be your name on the road marked with suffering. Though there's pain in the offering, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, I'll turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, Lord, still I will say, blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Almighty fortress is our God, our bulwark never fails. Our helper, he amid the flood of mortal ills prevailed. For still our ancient foe doth seek to work us woe. His craft and power are great, and on with cruel gain. On earth is not his equal. Then we in our own strength confide, our striving would be losing. Were not the right man on our side, the man of God don't choose. Just as true that may be, Jesus saved his name. Lord Sabaoth his name, from age to age the same. And he must win the battle. A mighty fortress is our God. That word above all earthly powers, no things to them abide. The Spirit and the gifts are ours, through him who lives beside. The goods and kindred go, this mortal life also, the body they may give, God's truth abideth still. His kingdom is forever. fortress is our God. A mighty fortress is our God. I see the mighty power of God that made the mountains rise. That's where the holy seas abide and built the lofty skies. I sing the wisdom that ordained the sun to rule the day. The moon shines through that God's command, and all the stars are lit. I sing the goodness of the Lord that perfect good. He formed the creatures with his word, and then pronounced them good. Lord, how thy wonders are displayed where'er I turn my eye. If I survey the ground I tread, or gaze upon the sky, there's not a plant or flower but walks like morning bloom. The clouds arise and tempests blow, thy order from the throne. While all that follows life from me is ever in my hand, and everywhere that we can go, now all our present there. Oh God, you are my God, and I will never praise you. Oh God, you are my God, and I will never praise you. I will seek you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your way. And step by step you lead me, and I will follow you all of my days. Oh God, you are my God, and I will never praise you. Oh God, you are my God, and I will never praise you. I will seek you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your ways. And step by step you lead me, and I will follow you all of my days. And I will follow you all of my days. And I will follow you all of my days. And step by step you lead me, and I will follow you all of my days. Maybe see. This is my Father's will, and to my listening ears, all nature sings and round me rings the music of the spring. This is my Father's will, I am staying in the throne of rocks and trees, of skies and seas, and the wonder. This is my Father's will. The birds their carols raise, the morning light, the lily white, where their makers praise. This is my Father's will, He shines in all the the rustling grass, I hear him pass. He speaks to me everywhere. This is my Father's word. Oh, let me therefore care. And though the wrong seems all so strong, God is the ruler there. This is my Father's word. Should my heart be sad? The Lord is King, let the heavens ring. God reigns, let the earth be glad. The Lord is King, let the heavens ring. God reigns, let the earth be glad. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you, and I'm lost without you. This is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. Your holy presence living in me. This is my daily bread. This is my daily bread. Your very word spoken to me, and I'm desperate for you, and I'm lost without you, and I'm desperate for you, and I'm lost without you.
I had searched to find the meaning of this life, something that would fill my empty soul. Some believe a lie, choose darkness over light, but I will stand and let the whole world know. I choose Jesus, I choose Jesus, the one who first chose me. stand unashamed, trusting in one name. 'Cause I have seen the cross and I believe this choice comes at a cost. All other things are lost. No other love could mean so much to me. Yeah, I choose Jesus. I choose Jesus, the one who first chose me. I choose Jesus. I choose Jesus, for now and eternity. He chose to love me when I felt unlovable. He chose to reach me when I felt unreachable. He carried me out of my fear and doubt. How I want the world to know I choose Jesus. I choose Jesus. I choose Jesus, the one who first chose me. I don't want anyone but you, my Jesus. I choose Jesus, for now and eternity. For now and eternity. Oh, ooh.
I got a big butt. It's gigantic, if I'm going to be blunt about it. And you know what? The funny thing is, I got several big butts. And before you discard me or wince at the disgusting notion of that, I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest that possibly you have at least one big butt as well. Yeah, you like that? Hurts a little, huh? Let me tell you something. Let me just tell you something, okay? Everybody we know has a big butt. And more often than not, it's the thing that actually gets in the way of us living a consistent life for Jesus. I think you know what I'm talking about. I'm going to expound a little bit, okay? See if you can recognize some of these butts. But I have to work more. But my favorite TV show is on. But my kids have practice. But I got to tweet something. But it's such a beautiful day. But I'm just not in the mood. But I deserve a break today. You see, everything kind of interferes with my life of just living an authentic life for God, okay? And more often than not, it always has something to do with some sort of butt, okay? Even the littlest of butt can distract me. It really can. The littlest butt can make me think, I'm not going to pray today. I'm not going to think about it today. I'm not going to deny myself. I'm not going to read the Bible, blah, blah, blah. Whatever God asks me to do, I seem to have a butt for it and get away, okay? And the most horrendously big butt of all time is the butt that gets in the way of me just hanging out with God and reading His Word. It's true. Think about it. All the times you're about to open that, and all of a sudden a big giant butt gets in the way. A butt, much like one of these. But I got a farm bill, but I'm tired, but the game's over, but I read last Tuesday, but I got to check Facebook, but I don't like Leviticus, but it's too hot in here, but I just don't like books, but I don't understand it, but it's boring. But what does that have to do with me in the 21st century? Those are some ugly butts, people.
Twice. First, because you thought he was talking about our rumps, and second, because his words may have hit a little too close to home. Maybe you stopped listening to him. That's what we do. If we don't like something, we feel an affront, so we stop listening. Our culture's become quite a dismissive group. Or maybe we listen, but immediately we start thinking of excuses and justifications. We say things like, well, that doesn't apply to me, and you don't know what I've been through, so I'm going to do whatever I want. In fact, growing up, we had a saying that this graphic epitomizes, right? Talk to the hand. Meaning, I'm not listening to anything you're saying. I'm dismissing it. It's what happens when we dismiss Jesus when he says something offensive, bizarre, or incomprehensible. Sadly, too many Christians have dismissed the words with a but. For the next 4 weeks, we're going to be doing a series called Dismissed. Throughout the series, we're going to look at 4 different teachings of Jesus that many Christians ignore, justify, or dismiss. As we begin this series today, I want us to reflect on the words of Paul in 2 Timothy 4. He says this, "For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths." I think you could easily substitute the word dismiss a couple of times in that text. Verse 3, people will dismiss sound doctrine. Verse 4, people will dismiss the truth and chase after myths. Paul is talking about weak believers. They're unwilling to break free from the habits of their own sinful lives. And so they're seeking after a spiritual teaching that's more convenient. They look to teachers who would tell them what they wanted to hear rather than the wholesome, challenging truth. And I see it all too often. Cheap grace that doesn't cost us anything. The health and wealth gospel that depicts Jesus and God as an ATM machine that will dole out hundreds if you have enough faith. And on it goes. The hard teachings of the Bible are dismissed for something more palatable. But here's the deal. Jesus did and said some radical things. Things that ruffled feathers, that made a lot of people uncomfortable, that caused some people to seek to kill him. And if we were to take time to really investigate what Jesus said and how he lived, it would probably make us uncomfortable as well. We may want to dismiss his teaching because it goes against what our itching ears want to hear. And sometimes we'll perform mental and logical gymnastics just so we can ignore Jesus' commands. But that's what this series is about. I've chosen 4 of Jesus' teachings that I see ignored, dismissed, and excused away. So for the next 4 weeks, I hope you're challenged and you're convicted by Jesus' teaching. And so that through his words, our hearts and our lives will be changed. Would you pray with me? God, we pray your blessing on this series. I pray that your words come alive to us, that they challenge us and convict us, that they make us want to become different people, the kind of people you've had in mind from the beginning. I pray that we do not justify your words away, that we do not ignore them or dismiss them, but that we do take them to heart. God, through your Spirit and through your word, may you change us and mold us and make us who you want us to be. To Christ we pray all these things. Amen.
Porn.
Seems a little drastic, doesn't it? Yet this is exactly what Jesus commands. He says this, "You've heard it said, do not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell." As I look at this text, it seems like there's quite a few things in it that we dismiss. Sometimes we tell ourselves that we can look but don't touch, that we can have all these thoughts racing through our minds, but as long as we don't act on them, then they're okay. But Jesus says, no. It's not just about restricting our actions. It's about having a pure heart, a pure mind. And then Jesus gets to the clearly dismissed teaching. Basically, Jesus told his disciples that if they struggle with a sin, they should remove the appendage that is causing the problem. If you can't stop lusting, then gouge out your eyes so you don't see such images. If you can't stop stealing, cut off your hand and remove your ability to do such things. It's a strong teaching, isn't it? Imagine if we did take this literally. There would be a lot of blind amputees among us, but we don't take it literally. Well, not all of us. A story exists about one of the great church fathers from the 3rd century named Origen. He was labeled by many as a religious fanatic. He gave up his job. He slept on the floor, he ate no meat, he drank no wine, he fasted twice a week, and he owned no shoes. But despite all of those things, he became one of the most influential theologians of his era. Reportedly, in an effort to tutor women without suspicion or temptation, Origen castrated himself. You heard me correctly. He cut off his man parts. The great irony is that Origen made allegorical interpretations of the Bible all the rage. He was the one who taught people to ignore the literal and look for the deeper spiritual meaning. Of all the texts that you would not want to take literally, it is this one, right? But tradition says that he did take it literally and went the whole way and emasculated himself. And if true, his reported self-mutilation is a drastic misinterpretation of the text. And sometimes Jesus' words are dismissed because we assume he's just using hyperbole, overstatement, exaggeration for effect. I'm sure that's what he was doing here. And I'm the first one to say, let's look at a text in the original context to figure out what the point is without getting distracted by overly literal interpretations. And I think that applies here. We shouldn't take this literally. Yes, Jesus is exaggerating to make his point. I don't think he really wants anyone to gouge out their eyes or to cut off their hands. But here's our problem. We dismiss the entire statement without getting the spiritual truth. We pass this off as Jesus just being antagonistic or idealistic or impractical. As a result, this passage has been set aside, and we go on living a certain kind of life that Jesus would find deplorable. Here's what Jesus is saying. Holiness is so important that you should become disfigured rather than be unholy. Jesus is calling for radical holiness. After all, amputation is extreme. In the medical world, few things are more radical than that. Doctors only cut off hands or feet or legs as a last resort when all else has failed. They amputate when they have no other choice. If they don't, the infection will spread and it will destroy the whole body. And so it's either the limb or the life. And so when Jesus shocks us with these statements like gouge out your eye and cut off your hand, he is saying that sin spreads like gangrene in our lives, poisoning all that it touches. And so we must amputate it from our lives. Don't underestimate the danger of sin. Take sin as seriously as you would some disease that might cause an amputation. Sin must be dealt with ruthlessly. Sever it from your life. Amputate it from your soul. Rip it from your heart, regardless of the consequences. We must be diligent and vigilant when it comes to dealing with sin. We must perform radical surgery on everything that defiles us and drags us down. Amputate sin from your life. That's what Jesus is saying. And if that means quitting a job that's tempting you to sin, if it means ending a relationship that is tempting you to sin, if it means moving from an environment that is tempting you to sin, Jesus is calling us to do it. I mean, no one wants to lose a friend. No one wants to lose a good-paying job. No one wants to lose a home. But that's the radical teaching of Jesus. And while in practical terms is quite a high price to pay, letting sin kill your spiritual life to cause you to fall away from God is far more costly. And that's what Jesus is illustrating. Losing a hand or an eye in this world may be tragic, but losing your soul to this world is much worse. And so for Jesus, for God, holiness is that important. Holiness isn't discussed much in today's world. Holiness is for priests and monks and radicals. And so not only do we dismiss the literal teaching of Jesus, we dismiss the spiritual lesson as well. It's unfathomable to think that we would give up anything just so we could be different or set apart or pure. And yet, over and over again, Jesus talks about the holy life being the life worth striving for, worth Him dying for. And so we dismiss it at our own peril and to our own detriment. But there's more to it than that even. We need to understand that we don't amputate sin from our lives because of personal holiness only. That's certainly part of it, but that would ignore the context of this text. The text comes from the Sermon on the Mount, and in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is framing everything in the idea of being salt and light in this world. We do different things to be salt and to be light. And so the same teaching about gouging eyes and cutting off hands, it comes up again in Matthew 18 and Mark 9, but then it's in different contexts. It comes up in the context of causing little children and others to stumble, basically leading them into sin. Matthew 18:7 says, "Woe to the world because of the things that cause people to sin. Such things must come, but woe to the person through whom they come." And then Jesus says, if your hand or foot causes you to sin, cut it off. If your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. Because our holiness doesn't just affect our relationship with God. It affects our relationship with this world. We don't want to contribute to a world of sin. Holiness is about making the world around us better so that people can see Jesus in us. And we are held accountable for the degree to which we accomplish that. Let me repeat this because it's vital to understanding Jesus' words. Holiness is not just for you. It's for the world. Purity is not just self-preservation. It's for the preservation of the world. The pursuit of holiness is not just a selfish endeavor. It is a witness endeavor. We pursue holiness in our lives so that people can see Jesus in us. That's why Jesus uses this overstatement. He wants to get our attention. He doesn't really expect us to cut off body parts and gouge out eyes. That won't solve the problem. But it shows the severity of the problem and the intensity we should go about in dealing with it. It is so important that people see Jesus in us that we must take holiness seriously. And when we do, it leads to an improved, better world, a world of peace. That's how Jesus describes it in the parallel passage in Mark 9. Right after Jesus warns about causing little ones to stumble and then talking about gouging and cutting, he says in Mark 9:49, "Everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if it loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? Have salt in yourselves and be at peace with each other." Jesus talks about two very important images found throughout the Bible, salt and fire. The idea of being salted with fire harkens back to the Old Testament sacrifices. In Leviticus 2:13, the Israelites are instructed to add salt to their grain offerings before they offer them up in fire. So you have this image of salt in the Sermon on the Mount as preservation. And then Mark adds to it the images of sacrifice. Don't miss the connection here. Jesus is telling us to live our lives as an offering to save the world. This was the life that Jesus modeled. Just like we depend upon the sacrifice of Jesus to be right with God, this world depends on us sacrificing ourselves to see Jesus. We offer up our lives as a sacrifice to God for the world. You see, avoiding sin and pursuing holiness at all costs, it preserves this world. It allows people to see Jesus. It brings peace. And it makes perfect sense, I think. Why do people fight? Why are there such awful things in the world? Why do we treat one another with such disdain? Because we choose selfishness over holiness. Our sinful condition keeps us from being at peace with one another. And that's why Jesus cares so much about holiness. That's why Jesus challenged the original hearers to go such extreme lengths to obtain it. Because holiness has serious ramifications and implications and should not be dismissed. Holiness is not being set apart from the world, but from sin. We don't become hermits and go into hiding so that we avoid the world. We set ourselves apart from sin, in the world but not of the world, different from the world. That is what benefits this world. In C. Montague's novel, Rough Justice, a memorable scene describes a little boy named Bron going to church for the first time with his governess. He watches with interest every part of the service. And the preacher climbs into the high pulpit, and Bron hears him tell some terrible news. It's about a brave and a kind man who was nailed to a cross, terribly hurt, a long time ago, but who still feels a dreadful pain even now, because there was something not done that he wants them all to do. Little Bron thinks that the preacher is telling the story because a lot of people are there, and they're going to do something about it. And Bron sits impatiently on the edge of his pew. He can hardly wait to see you make the first move in righting this injustice. But he sits quietly, and he decides that after the service, maybe someone then will do something about it. And so little Bron begins to weep, but nobody else seems all that upset. The service ends as people walk away as if they had not heard such terrible news, as if nothing remarkable had happened. As Bron leaves the church, he's trembling. And the governess looks at him and says, "Bron, don't take it to heart. Someone will think that you're different." When God calls us to be holy, He calls us to be different. Distinct, separate, not the same, out of the ordinary, unusual. C.S. Lewis wrote this: "How little people know who think that holiness is dull. When one meets the real thing, it's irresistible." A holy life will make the deepest impression. A holy person is not an odd person, it's a different person. A holy person has a quality about their life that is unique. A holy person takes Jesus Christ seriously. And if we want to take Jesus' words seriously, here's what I think it may look like. I don't have to cut out my tongue. I just have to quit gossiping. I don't have to chop off my hand. I just have to quit stealing. I don't have to gouge out my eyes. I just have to stop looking lustfully at people and things. I don't have to cut my ears off. I just have to stop surrounding myself with things that are not edifying. I don't have to cut my feet off. I just have to stop walking into situations that are not giving glory to God. I don't need to amputate anything on my body, but I need to cut off the source of the sin. And that will look differently for each of us. It might be drastic, like the examples I used earlier, or it might cost me much less. You know, a lot of you here have already given up a variety of things to follow God. Various addictions, from drugs to drinking to pornography. Others have lost friends and loved ones for the sake of the gospel. This is all part of the normal life of surrender to Jesus. We are in a constant process of removing sin from our lives. Whether the sacrifice is large or small, God is calling us to be different and set apart and holy. So when Jesus said, "Gouge out your eye, chop off your hand," to his original audience, he used this shocking imagery to wake people up to the importance of holiness. He knows about the danger of sin. He knows how it hurts your relationship with God and how it destroys your witness to those around you. each of us must ask is this: how far am I willing to go for holiness?